Hi, I'm Dave Horwitz, and I'm here at City Art Salon. And in terms of my painting and how I got started, it's what I did as a kid. I think kids sometimes, most kids I think gravitate towards one thing or another. I see that with my own kids and other kids. You know, some are very scientific, some are more artistic, some are extremely athletic. And it's what I did naturally when I was young, growing up, is I drew and painted a little bit. But I never really saw it as a viable career path, and which is kind of strange because my dad was a novelist, published novelist, 8 novels, and it's just I never really saw going in, you know, maybe because I saw all this sort of stress about being a working artist, trying to make a living and stuff like that. I never really saw it as a career thing. So, you know, I went off to college and, you know, went into work, you know, worked and had, you know, in business and stuff like that. And my wife actually went to art school, and she was a painting major. And she always liked, you know, my parents kept all my stuff. And when we cleaned out my parents' house in '86 after they passed, she loved my stuff when I was a kid, which sounds silly because, you know, it's just kid stuff. But she was always encouraging me to get back into it. And I think in 2002, I took 1.5 classes out at art college here in Philly. And it just, I had one teacher I really liked. He was really relaxed and not cool, but the second teacher was really stiff, and I just really didn't get into it. And I actually put it off for another 10 years doing anything. And around 2012, I just said, you know, basically, you're not getting any younger. And I threw myself into it. And I kind of made 2 rules for myself in terms of getting involved in painting. I didn't want to be a student, so I didn't want to take any classes. I didn't want to do workshops. I just wanted to learn by doing. And I didn't want anything to be sort of like an experiment when I painted, or like a practice session type thing. Like every painting I wanted to be complete. I just wanted everything to be like, you know, to do a complete painting in one session. It wasn't like an exercise for a painting I might do later. And I just started painting. And I didn't know a color wheel. I remember talking to a professor at PAFA in an art store, a guy who was really supportive of me early on. And he turned to me and said, so the opposite of purple is, and I had that deer in headlight look, right? And he says, you really don't know your color wheel. And I said, no, I don't. And it's like whenever I try and do stuff like that, my brain just freezes. You know, it just doesn't want to go there. I was that way when it came to like color wheel, and I didn't want to, you know, it just wasn't the way I wanted to approach it. And so I just started by painting a lot. And I started painting really small. Actually, when I first started painting, it wasn't that small. It was like 9 by 12 inches, which, you know, is small, but it's not, you know, very, very small. And I realized that wasn't working. Why wasn't it working? I needed to learn how color worked by doing it. So I started painting really, really, really small, like on Post-it notes. And I actually brought some of them with me to show. And it's like this is, I call it my Post-it note period, you know, and I have a whole bunch of them. And I even went smaller than Post-it notes. I mean, this is like, I don't know, like 1/4 of an inch or something like that, 1/2 an inch. And, you know, it's like, and I remember having a friend from college come to visit. And when I posted this stuff on Facebook at first, you know, I didn't, and I put it up without any background in it. So when he came to the house, he was like, let me see your artwork. And I took him upstairs and I was showing these, and he was like, oh my God, I thought these were like full-size paintings. And he was like really freaking out in kind of a funny way. So what I did is I did so many of these, and what I got from doing this was just, it freed me up because I could paint small and I could quickly see like what colors work, you know, like what do I like what works for my eye. And it wasn't like I was trying to memorize anything. It was just like seeing quickly without having to waste a lot of paint or work on a really big canvas with, you know, a lot of real estate to cover, how to like, you know, how to like make color work, how to make it vibrate, how to make it do something where when you look at it, you kind of like get excited because the colors like, you know, I mean, I think color is like music, you know, and it does something to your brain, you know, moves things around in there. And so that's what I'm trying to do with color. And I was able to do that by learning how to do it, working very small at first. You know, there's this quote from Picasso that's always used. He's had a lot of great quotes. And he said, "It took me 4 years to learn how to paint like Raphael and a lifetime to learn how to paint like a child." And, you know, what did he mean by that? You know, well, I think different people will take different things away from it. What I take away from it is if you've watched a child do art, and I can remember myself doing art when I was a child, they're very, very, very focused. And they might be looking at something on a table in front of them. And there's nothing between them and the table that they're looking at. Let's say it's an apple on a table. There's no space there. And you know, they've just seen the apple, and there's nothing there. Figuratively, metaphorically, you know, they're not thinking. All that space is collapsed, and there's no distance between them and what they're trying to paint. And what they're doing is trying really hard to get it. They're looking really hard at what they're working on and trying to get it just right. And what I find rewarding is when you get something just right. It could be a line. It could be how two colors work next to one another. But it's that, it's achieving, it's getting something down on the canvas that feels perfect. So my process for painting, well, as you can see from the show that I'm in, I do a lot of faces, and it's interesting about the faces because it's what excites me. And I went to high school with this guy who's like a super famous painter now, Walton Ford. He sells his stuff to like Leonardo DiCaprio for like, you know, zillions of dollars, and he's really, really good. And someone described him as Audubon on crack. I mean, he does these huge, oversized paintings of animals fighting each other that are very realistic, and he does them in watercolor, and he can't make a mistake, you know, because it's really hard to correct watercolor. Anyway, I found an interview with him. He was a couple years younger than me in high school, so we worked on the newspaper together, but we weren't really close. But he was a super nice kid, and I have a great thing. He signed my yearbook with a drawing of the Hulk from Marvel Comics. Anyway, I found this interview of him online, and he was talking about Picasso, and he was talking about himself. And he said how when he went to art school, he went to RISD, he gave up all the stuff he was really good at naturally to be super experimental and all this stuff. And this is him talking. And he said he was basically, the feeling there was like everything you did earlier was crap, and you got to like reinvent yourself in some other stuff. And when he got out of RISD, he was kind of lost, and he was living in the Lower East Side trying to do all this stuff, but he kept going back to doing what he did as a kid, which is drawing like animals. And people would come around to buy them. And he realized like that's what he really liked doing, what he liked doing as a kid. And he was like, thank God I found my way back, you know? And he was talking about Picasso, who like, you know, he was probably drawing bulls, he said, at like age 5. And he was probably drawing them at age 10. And he was probably drawing them at age 15, you know? And then he was doing them as an adult because that's what, you know, turned him on. So for like me, when I was a kid, I used to draw portraits of my parents. I used to copy faces from comic books. I mean, it was just what I was attracted to was faces. And so for me, that's sort of what I gravitate towards mostly. And the inspiration for that is I really like old photographs, vintage photographs, and ones from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, black and white photos. And I know people were more stylish and everything back then in terms of how they dressed, but in other ways, they were less perfect looking, you know, like things weren't as Photoshop looking. And there's a sort of like imperfection in the way people looked. And I can't really explain it because, obviously you had Hollywood and stuff like that back then that was very glamorous. But in everyday life, people just seemed to be less, there was some type of imperfection that in their faces. It's like I look at my dad at age 65, going through the Depression in World War II. I have a photograph of him. And at age 65, he looks like he's 85 almost. I mean, and today people everyone looks like Dustin Hoffman when they're 65. I mean, they look like kids, you know what I mean? Or Bill Gates. And it's a whole different look. And I just like that older look. And so some of my inspiration is, and what I work off of, is old photographs. And when I see a photograph that kind of turns me on, I want to paint it. In terms of my process, I really just try and attack the paint, the canvas with the paint. And I try, I'm very neurotic in all of my life, except for painting. And it's the one area where I'm not, for whatever reason. And I just sit down and I paint, and I don't, there's very little thought. There's no thought. I try and have as little thought as possible, but I don't have to try. It comes naturally. And I try not to be very verbal internally about it. And I don't care if I mess up. It's just and I don't try and fix things. Maybe because I don't have the training, or maybe it's just not what I'm trying to accomplish. But I find every time I try and fix and I tinker, I just lose something. I lose the energy that was there, and it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, I paint over, or I use it, as a base for some other painting. I probably have painted over 25% of my stuff. And sometimes I'll miss something, like, damn, I really wish I had that painting back. But for the most part, it turns out it's better for the best that I do paint over. Let me just say first, I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to exhibit here. It's just been great. Kenny and I found each other on Instagram. We're both in Philly, and I think, just the way Instagram works, maybe they try and hook you up with people from, local things. And somehow I came across his studio, his gallery, and we started going back and forth. And I would look at, the shows that he put up, and they were great. I mean, some unbelievable artists, really vibrant, really exciting. I mean, a lot of energy. And it felt unique. It wasn't boring, I mean, the artwork was just, it popped. It just made you feel something, which is, and it was great. And we started talking on Instagram, and he, offered me the chance to show here. And it's been a great experience. One of the things that I've really, really thought was wonderful, and I really appreciate, was that he didn't try and curate the show. He left it up to me. He wanted to be my vision. I have a lot of artwork, and he wanted me to, go through my artwork and put together a collection of paintings, a grouping that worked. He didn't want to give input. He wanted to be my vision. And I think that comes through in all the shows that he has up here, where it's, the artists, you get a sense that it's the artist's vision, what they're, working on. Maybe it's a group of paintings they've done over, a 1 year period or something like that. And I think that, some places, there's more curation, I think, by the, the studio owner, and which is fine. There's different ways to get to the same place. But I think it's, from my point of view as a painter, as an artist, it's been really positive, really good to be able to not only have my paintings here, but have the ability, the opportunity, I should say, to decide what works as a show. And it made me really, it made me think about stuff and all that, what would work. So I think it's a unique place, and I think, Kenny's doing great stuff here. And there've been unbelievable shows in the past, and I'm really looking forward to his shows down the road. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity.